Alright, I want to start this video by being very clear, because I know how this is going to sound to some people. I like the Old Peace update. Not ironically, not cautiously, not in a, oh, this will be good later kind of way. I genuinely think this is a solid update. And more importantly, I think it's a necessary one for Warframe right now. Now, that doesn't mean it's perfect, it doesn't mean all criticism is wrong, and it definitely doesn't mean this update is for everyone. But what I'm seeing online is a lot of people talking past what this update is actually trying to do and judging it almost entirely on expectations it was never meant to meet. So this video is not going to be hype, it's not doom posting, it is not cope as much as I want it to be. This is a straight, no bullshit breakdown of the Old Peace update, why I think it works, where it falls short, and why I believe it matters a lot more than people realize, especially with Tau very clearly being set up. But instead of arguing about vibes first, let's just walk through what actually happens in the Old Peace quest. In order, because the structure tells you exactly what DE was trying to do, at least in my opinion. The quest opens up by immediately reframing what the Old Peace actually was. We're not introduced to it as some golden age, we're shown it as a fragile ceasefire held together by mutual exhaustion rather than trust. The important takeaway here is simple: the Old Peace wasn't harmony, it was unresolved tension pretending to be stability. This sets the tone for the entire quest. Nothing that follows is about nostalgia, it's about unfinished business. As the quest progresses, we're taken through key moments and decisions that used to feel isolated or vague. What the Old Peace does here is subtle but important. It doesn't change what happened, it changes how we understand why it happened. Events that once felt like disconnected lore drops are now framed as part of a broader attempt to maintain control, balance, or delay collapse. This is where, in my opinion, the update does a lot of its heavy lifting quietly. Instead of adding new lore, it organizes existing lore into a clearer chain of cause and effect, while still adding a little bit more lore. I know, it's confusing. Trust me, this is Warframe, it's normal. Once the context is established, the quest deliberately starts highlighting contradictions. Agreements that were supposed to last don't. Promises feel conditional. Compromises clearly favored survival over resolution. This is the point where the idea of peace really starts falling apart. You're meant to realize that no one truly trusted the outcome, everyone expected conflict to return, they were just buying time. This isn't presented as a failure of individuals, it's a failure of the system itself. Kind of like in our own world, right? The quest then pivots to consequences. By avoiding real resolution back then, the factions involved didn't eliminate conflict, they postponed it and allowed it to evolve. This is a crucial narrative beat because it reframes modern Warframe conflicts as inevitable outcomes, not sudden disasters. In other words, the problems we're dealing with now are the interest on an unpaid debt from back then. That idea carries a lot of weight, especially for longtime players. Now at this point, the quest stops looking backward and starts looking forward. The tone changes. What began as reflection becomes a warning. This is what happens when peace is built on fear. This is what happens when problems are buried instead of solved. The quest isn't telling you, this was wrong, it's telling you, this will happen again if nothing changes. This is where the Old Peace stops being historical context and becomes narrative setup. Very well done, by the way. Now, Tau enters the conversation. Tau is not thrown in your face. Instead, it exists as an implication. The quest makes it clear that previous peace efforts failed because they were internal, the next conflict won't be contained the same way, and whatever comes next won't allow the same compromises. Tau doesn't need a name drop to feel present. The quest is preparing you mentally for a fundamentally different scale of consequence, which is incredibly apparent during the entire quest. The end state, nothing is resolved, and that's quite literally the point. The quest doesn't end with closure. There's no victory, no final answer, no sense that things are fixed, and that's intentional. The Old Peace ends with uncertainty, because uncertainty is the honest outcome of unresolved history. The takeaway is clear, the past explains the present, but it doesn't save us from the future. That is basically the entirety of the quest. Let's start with expectations, because this is where everything went sideways. The Old Peace is not a system rework. It is not a grind-heavy update. It is not a power reset. or some massive endgame expansion. If you went into this expecting new loops, new farms, or something that radically changes how you play day to day, yeah, I understand why you're disappointed. But that's not a failure of the update, that's a mismatch between expectation and intent. The Old Peace is a narrative consolidation update. Its job is to recontextualize past events, reinforce themes Warframe has been circling for years, and clean up story threads before the next major escalation. And here's the important part, Warframe needed this. Because without narrative grounding, the next big moment, Tau included, would feel hollow. Why I like the Old Peace update is actually really simple. Let me break it down in 3 steps. 1, it actually treats the story with respect. Warframe's story has always been ambitious, but also scattered, or downright fucking messy. For a long time it felt like cool moments existed in isolation, lore lived in fragments, and big reveals didn't always connect cleanly. The Old Peace doesn't try to rewrite history. It doesn't pretend earlier content didn't exist. Instead, it reframes it. It takes things that were previously vague, implied, or half explained, and puts them into a clear narrative structure. You start to see intent where before there was ambiguity. And for a live service game this old, that's impressive, because it's much easier to just move forward and ignore the past. 2, it intentionally slows the pace. When you've been on my channel before and you've watched some of my videos, you know I'm a huge fan of slowing down the pace of this fucking game. This is probably the most controversial part, and also the part I respect the most. Like I just said, Warframe has been stuck in escalation mode for years. Bigger enemies, bigger stakes, bigger reveals. The Old Peace says, stop. Hammer time! Let's sit what already happened. Let's examine consequences. Let's acknowledge that peace wasn't actually stable. It was always fragile. That slowdown gives weight back to the narrative. And honestly, Warframe needed that breather more than another fireworks show. And 3rd, it chooses tone over shock value. This update isn't super flashy as much as the boss fights want it to be. It doesn't rely on massive twists or constant spectacle. Instead, it leans into unease, unresolved tension, and the sense that things are not as settled as they seemed. That tone is doing a lot of heavy lifting, especially for what's coming next. Now, let's address the criticisms properly. There is not enough gameplay. That is true. I can't beat around the bush, that is absolutely true. If you judge updates purely by how much repeatable content they add, the Old Peace feels very light. But Warframe already has too many systems competing for attention. Not every update should add another grind. Some updates should only add clarity. The Old Peace prioritizes narrative coherence over mechanical depth. And while that won't satisfy everyone, it's not inherently a bad decision. This feels like a setup, not a payoff. Also correct, because it is a setup. Who would have fucking known? And here's the uncomfortable truth. Warframe has rushed payoffs before, and it hurts the story every single time. This time, they're doing the slower, more deliberate thing, establishing context, reinforcing themes, letting tension exist without immediately resolving it. That's a gamble, but it's a mature one, and just shows you how far Warframe has come. This should have been done earlier. Again, I agree. Some of the context feels overdue. Some of these connections would have benefited from being revisited sooner, but I'd rather have this now, done properly, than never at all. And I think this is a new direction for Warframe in general. I think these updates are coming out maybe a little bit later, but they are that much better. Why Old Peace is really about Tau. This is the part I think people are missing entirely, or just not really contextualizing. The Old Peace isn't really about what already happened. It is about preparing the narrative for Tau. Tau has been teased for literal years. Maybe deliberately, I don't know. The whole direction of Warframe is a bit messy, so you know, you don't introduce something like Tau casually, but you know, Railjack. But before you go there, you need to reframe past conflicts, show why previous peace efforts failed, make the next escalation feel earned. The Old Peace does that groundwork. It creates narrative momentum without firing the starting gun too early, so when Tau finally arrives, it won't feel random, it won't feel forced, it'll feel inevitable. And that's exactly how major story moments should feel. So here's my honest conclusion. I like the Old Peace update. I really do. I think it's thoughtful, I think it's intentional, and I think it's going to age much, much better than people expect. Now, is it perfect? No, absolutely not. Is it content heavy? No. But is it important? Oh, absolutely. Abso-fucking-lutely. Warframe doesn't need constant escalation. It needs direction, structure, and meaning, in my opinion. The Old Peace provides that. If you agree, or if you strongly disagree, tell me why in the comments. Just keep it honest. And if you're here for more no bullshit Warframe takes, explanations, and opinions that respect your time, or even little guides, I do like making guided content, consider subscribing. Or don't. You know, do what you want. It's a new year. I don't know. Do what you want. Later, Tenno.